What's up, everybody? Excuse me. What's up, everybody? I hope everybody is doing well. Make sure you hit the like button on your way in. Let's get some folks up in here. I appreciate it. So this is a last minute type of event here. So we're going to jump right into it. What's up, Garrett? What's going on? I got this new thing at the bottom here. So everybody's comments should be popping up here. So I shouldn't have to focus on them, but I will anyway. So should be down in the lower right hand side there. So hey NW. So we'll see how this goes. You guys should be able to see your comments there. So keep them scrolling, keep them going. Know what I'm saying? Know what I'm saying? I see the topic. Yeah. We're gonna talk about it, right? We're gonna talk about it. We're gonna get into it. We're gonna get into it. Good evening to you, Rhonda. You guys, make sure you, if you haven't considered becoming a member, think about that. I'm doing some members only videos. Right now, I'm aiming for once a week, but I want to get up to 2 times a week, and eventually, I want to do a members only stream where we can ask each other questions and be a little bit more candid and all that kind of stuff. So that is the plan for the future. So consider becoming a member. All right. So who else is in the building here? Yoli. Guys, look down the lower right hand side. You should see your banner. Keep going. That way, if I miss anything, you guys can get it. But I do appreciate you guys commenting. So make sure you hit the like button so we can acknowledge you, say hello. I am claiming fair use. We're going to be talking about some stuff, showing some videos. As always, I'm going to be claiming fair use up front. So, and all that kind of good stuff. So, hit that thumbs up on your way in. I would have greatly appreciate it. Right. All right. Who else is here? Y Square is in the building. Yoli's in the building. Miles is here. Every time I think things out there can't get any worse, it ups the ante. Listen, that's why I'm talking about a lot of stuff that we're talking about, right? So this relationship stuff, and I was just texting somebody talking about, this relationship stuff that I'm talking about a lot. I really want to get back into more self-improvement type of things, but this is unfortunately what we're dealing with a lot of times, and this is going to be endemic. It's going to be an example of what we're talking about. Considering what we as African American people, persons of the African diaspora, are dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And if we can't get it together with our families and we can't get it together with our mating strategies, then we're in for a fix. We are in for a fix. All right, so we're gonna get let's go here. We are going to show a couple of videos. Let me get my I usually load this up before, but I didn't do that today. Where is it at? 518, no, 520. Dang, hold on a second here. I really should have did this before. Where is this at? Anyway, I hope everybody's doing good. Hope everybody's work day was well. I've been so busy, so busy. Where am I at here? 520. Desktop. Oh man, what did I do with this video? I recorded a video, now I can't find it. Cancel. Oh geez, what did I do with this video? Did I rename it? Let's look for Lowry. I recorded the video because I don't like playing it from the website because sometimes they act slow and all that kind of stuff. So now I got to find, and then I moved it to someplace, and I got to find where I put it at. Come on. Oh, this is terrible. because it's not. Oh, here it is. All right, let's go. Where's it at? Podcast. I knew it was there. Okay. All right. How did I get over there? All right. What the heck? Sorry about that. All right. So, am I frozen? I was frozen for a minute there. Okay. It's becoming the majority. I see you there. Thanks, Garrett. It's becoming a majority. The coffee date is not good enough for some women. I was just listening to stuff like that, and they were talking about that. Yeah. So it's really becoming a problem that sometimes I get tired of talking about that, but but it's definitely a problem. I was just listening to a podcast where we're talking about that, and they were talking, and there's this video that I wanted to play about this lady Sabby Sabs. Maybe I'll do a live tomorrow night. You guys let me know if you want to do a live tomorrow night. Tomorrow's Wednesday, yeah. So there's a video that I want to play by Sabby Sabs, where Sabby Sabs, who is a commenter. She usually talks about a lot of political stuff, and she was mentioning about the black numbers concerning black women's marriage rates. And so I saw somebody else who had kind of beat me to it. So maybe I'll do that tomorrow. You guys let me know if you want to do one. I'll have a show tomorrow. Hello to you, Blondie Monique. She said, I'll still dance if we see each other. And I thought, are you kidding me? Okay. I like coffee dates. I prefer the type of date when I first meet the guy. LOL. Wow. Okay. So here we go. So we're going to play. Let's see. Let's get into this here. Video file. Podcast 520. Here it is.
North Carolinian. My first ancestor coming to North Carolina in the late 1600s into what would become Bertie County. I say that with an immense amount of pride. But to admit that I'm a 12th generation anything in this country means that I am most likely the direct descendant of enslavers. In my case, I am. I'm the direct descendant of enslavers. And that's not an easy thing to say. But I grew up in a time where, that flag and that history was revered. And when I look back, I think it was the conflation of that flag with Southern identity. And it came to mean all of these other things. I grew up on the Leonard Skinner shows when they hit, Sweet Home Alabama, and a 100-foot by 50-foot Confederate flag dropped at the back of the stage, and everybody went nuts, and my daddy was one of them. And then I grew up, and I read books. And I think about someone like Alexander Stephens, and I'm assuming we all know who Alexander Stephens is, but if we don't, he was the vice president of the Confederacy. And when he was defining what that institution was, he said, its foundation rests, its cornerstone is laid upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery and subordination to the superior race is his natural and born condition. That's what the man said. That's what he said it defined. So I don't care about any kind of revisionist history that wishes to place it as something else, because it's not that. And I think about the black communities in Jackson County. I think about people who have descendants here who go back hundreds of years. And what every one of you who voted for that is saying is that you revere a moment in time when their ancestors were in bondage. That's what that means. I view your actions as an act of white supremacy. That's what I view it as. I think it's shameful. I'm a 12th generation.
I appreciate this, brother. And I got this from Instagram, so obviously he's at some type of community meeting or something like that. So I'm not exactly sure where he's at, but I appreciate him standing up and at least saying what he's saying. I don't have the full context or anything else that he said, Again, I get this is a 1 or 1.5 minute clip from Instagram, but I do appreciate anyone who's going to stand up and say, you know, to try to tell the truth, or at least tell the truth about the situation that we're dealing with, right? So for today, what we're dealing with, what we're talking about is the idea of race, and things always come back to race. And in particular, we're going to focus on conservatives who think that they are part of a club. Let me say it again. Conservatives, black conservatives in particular, think that they are part of a particular club, or that their conservativeness, or that their worldview, or that their politics, or that their frame of thinking, or the fact that they try to disassociate themselves with some people at certain times trumps, outweighs their blackness. And every once in a while, we get that N-word wake up call, right? So, and every once in a while, they got to be reminded. So, as I usually do, we're playing some warm up videos to get to it, to before allow some people to trickle into the building. Make sure that you hit the like button on your way in. So, the first video was a brother out there who knew his ancestry and recognized that he came from a privileged environment, and the people in his family and his lineage owned people that look like the vast majority of us in this chat. And if you're not of this hue or complexion, I appreciate you guys checking it out, and we love you just the same. But there's a fact that many of us black folks have to understand, and that is sometimes no matter what you do, no matter where you are, no matter what you think, this is what some people think about you. And once your politics change, when this is going to become very evident as we go on, once your politics change, once your thought process change, and once you start standing up, you become useless to them. So let me read through some of these comments here. Miles has been going off here. Let's see. Okay, Garrett, excuse me, Garrett was going on. I extended a coffee date and was rejected. Women don't respond. An older sweet lady friend of mine says men won't respond to her. What the heck is going on? And he goes on to say, Rhonda says, Garrett, a coffee date is not good enough for some women. Rhonda is becoming the majority. She said, it'll still dance if we see each other. And I thought, are you kidding me? I'm not sure what you mean by that. It'll still dance. I don't know. Just pay. I don't know what she meant. What you mean by that? Miles, coffee and talk or walk and talk promotes exercise and gets a pulse on if they're having capacity to speak or not. Y squared T is more my style. Listen, a lot of people are out there doing what they're doing, So we shall see. Good evening to you, Angela Amby. Thank you so much. Thanks for checking in from Philly. So we're going to continue on with the video here, with a little bit more of the video here. And again, we're talking about how conservatives think that they're part of the club, when eventually they got to be reminded, you ain't part of this club. Or if you are, you're an honorary member. And anytime we feel like it, we can pull your card. Hit the like button.
North Carolinian, my first.
Gotta listen to this. I've never been so in love with a stranger.
I don't know if you are attacking DEI because you convinced yourself that racism and discrimination doesn't exist anymore, or if you've just convinced yourself that it's okay. What I do know is that white supremacist groups still feel emboldened enough to march openly in American streets. People are proudly proclaiming themselves racist and bigots on social media and even national television. And I know that it'll be those people that are cheering and applauding for you the loudest when you decide to dismantle diversity, equity, and inclusion in our schools. And the fact that doesn't give you pause, that it doesn't make you feel sick and slimy, tells me everything I need to know about you. When I look at you,
Absolutely. Thank you for this comment there, NW. Malcolm X knew that. Yeah, somehow we forget it. Somehow we think that our success, our ability to move out the hood, somehow we forget, because we made so many strides, or we write certain papers, or we sit on certain panels, or we achieve to a certain level of success, or get a certain level of job, that we don't think that we have, that we can forget about our blackness, or the race doesn't matter. And listen, I want that to be true. I want that to be true. But there's always a sneaking sensation in my mind that some people see me a different way. I may have been a former police officer, but don't think that I'm not concerned when I see a cop pull the Huey behind me, right? So I have the same mindset that many of us always have. I push my kids to become the best versions of themselves, to remind them of who they are, what they are in their blackness. I tell my black female daughter that she is a female, and the world sees her a certain way. I tell my son that he's a black male, and the world's going to see him a certain way. And we gotta understand that. We gotta understand that. So yeah, we gotta understand that. Exactly. Yeah, we're not racist. We just got to move smart. We got to be wise. Greetings to you, a peaceful life. I got to have you on here soon, brother. The KKK is in our own home, is in our own home for the Black American man. Okay. You have to be wise and tell the kids, you have to be wise and tell my kids the same thing. Absolutely. We got to understand, this world that we're living in. And, it's become more apparent as we go along here. I got a couple more videos and we're going to get to the main event. Hit the like button. Let's get some more people in here. Please hit the like button. If you're watching this in the future, watching this recording, please make sure you hit the like button. It's very important.
Is that your hard work doesn't matter. What you put in doesn't matter. You could show up every day. You could get here early. You could leave late. You could put in years, blood, sweat, and tears. And if I have a better relationship with this guy, he's going to get the job over you. Remember that.
That's so good. I had to say it. I'm going to play it again. I think that this sister here is. I think this is the sister that was sleeping her way to the top at ESPN or Fox News or wherever it was. I could be wrong. They sometimes they look alike to me, so I can't really tell. but I think that's her anyway. But whatever she's saying is true, and if she knows about having a better relationship, and it's her or allegedly her, or she was allegedly sleeping her way up to the top, then then she knows what she's talking about. And I can tell you this is all the time at the PD, and I'm quite sure you guys could tell us stories about your job. It's not what you know, it's who you know. It's not what you know, it's who you know. And I absolutely hated that. I talked about that before about playing the game and the PD. I hated it. But I tell my son, you got to do it. You want to move up the ranks, this is what you got to do. You got to play the game. You got to go to these events. You got to spend time outside the house. You got to go drinking with people. You got to go to the golf course with people. You got to play this game. That's only if you want to move up. I am in a place where I don't have to do that anymore. Although if I wanted to move up in certain coursework and get more opportunities and all that, you got to volunteer for this committee. When I had that job for the university, they wanted me to just sign up for this committee and do this and do that. Oh my God. I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it.
What you put in doesn't matter. You could show up every day. You could get here early. You could leave late. You could put in years, blood, sweat, and tears. And if I have a better relationship with this guy, he's going to get the job over you. Remember that.
Yeah, I'll remember that. I think this next one is the late comedian George Carlin. He's about to tell us some harsh truths. If you never heard this, it's a big club and you ain't in it. And this is exactly, it's leading up to our main event. It's a big club and you ain't in it. Let me get to some comments here. We must learn history. In 1681, it was put into the term called pale-skinned people, white people. This was because of Bacon's rebellion. Yeah, some pretty good books about that. Something like The Origin of White People, and I forget the author's name. He wrote 2 books. It's escaping me, but there's a couple of books about that. The invention of the white race. I think the books are called. Really should read those books. So here we go. Got to be asleep to believe it. Yeah, it's 20. This is about 20 years. George Carlin died in 2008, and he talked about 30 years ago from that point, right? 2008, 17 years ago. So that lets you know, and things are just getting worse and worse and worse and worse. So again, it's a big club, and you ain't in it. You ain't in it, and I ain't in it either, right? So yeah, George Carlin was the man. George Carlin is his older stuff from the 70s. He was ahead of his time. He was ahead of his time. So why should they care about what they're doing? Why should they care when they doing what it takes to do what they do? Yeah, they don't care, right? They don't care. A couple more videos here, then we get to the main attraction. Was listening to someone comment on chaos earlier. Chaos lesson still applicable beyond the grave, ahead of his time. Chaos was definitely ahead of his time. My son is still listening to this dude. So yeah. Still listening to him. All right, a couple more videos here. All right, so this is going to become important. So this is Charlemagne the God from the Breakfast Club, and I might have to clip this out because every time I put something up here from the Breakfast Club, they try to demonetize me. So if you're watching this in the future, you might not be able to see this. So because I might have to clip it out. Anyway, this is Charlemagne the God, and he's interviewing Larry Elder. Larry Elder is a conservative himself, a black conservative from California. I think he grew up in Detroit, though, in Michigan or somewhere like that. And he was a radio host for many years. I think he's just finally stopped doing that. He ran for president, even though I think that was kind of a scam. I don't think he was. No, not for. Yeah, he ran for president and he ran for governor of California. Nobody's gonna like this dude. Although he's a bright guy, man. He runs down facts and statistics. He's a bright guy. He's one of the few conservative hosts I would listen to, even though he made you cringe a lot of times. I'm like, oh my God, what are you saying, Larry? But listen, he's a smart dude, definitely smart. So he's on the Breakfast Club being interviewed. Charlemagne's going to ask him about what? The wake-up call. we're getting to the wake-up call. We're slowly building up to the wake-up call. Here we go. Patrice O'Neill was definitely ahead of his time too. Yeah. Here we go. The wake-up call.
Have you ever heard of the term nigga wake-up call?
No.
It is an incident where a person of color forgets that they are of color and are reminded rather brutally by an unexpected act of racism. Have you ever had any of those?
Oh, brother.
I'm just asking. You think you've ever had
I'm acutely aware, Charlemagne, that I'm a black person, just as you are a black person. And when Joe Biden insulted you by saying, you ain't really black, we don't know whether or not you want to vote for me or vote for Donald Trump, it seems to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part. How dare this guy come in here and insult you, a black man, and tell you you got to think a certain kind of way? I'm amazed that you weren't mad about that.
I'm not gonna say it upset me, just like I'm not letting you upset me. You know what I mean? I don't tend to get upset over things like that. But what I did say,
well, you just not talk about a nigger wake-up call, and it seemed to me that should have been a wake-up call on your part to have a white guy come in here who also said, by the way, about Mitt Romney. Because he didn't want to put more regulations on Wall Street, going to put y'all back in chains. And Joe Biden has lied for decades about his civil rights record, claiming that he desegregated movie theaters and restaurants in Wilmington, Delaware, when he didn't do any of that. He lied and said that he tried to visit Nelson Mandela during apartheid South Africa. He did not. And he came in here and told you aren't even black and let you think a certain kind of way. It seems to me that should have been a nigga wake-up call for you, but it wasn't, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, no, for the record, I'm not a Democrat or Republican.
I didn't say you were.
I think both.
I don't know what you are. I never even asked you about your party affiliation.
Yeah,
I'm just saying, but you are black.
Absolutely.
And to have a white guy come in here and tell you have to say think a certain kind of way, otherwise you, quote, ain't black. Wow.
How should I have replied to him, you think?
What I just now said, how dare you insult me and tell me I think as a human being, let alone as a black person? I don't tell you how to think, Joe Biden. How dare you come in here and tell me how I should think? I'm going to vote for Donald Trump if I want to vote for Donald Trump. And if I want to vote for Donald Trump, it does not make me not black. 20% of black people, black men, as I said, voted for Donald Trump in 2020. Are they not black now? So only 80% of black men walking around are really black, 20% are not because they voted for Donald Trump. How insulting is that? How condescending is that?
I mean, you're probably right, but I didn't take it in that way.
Well, I did.
I think I got another short little video, and then we'll get to the main attraction. Yeah, definitely Larry roasted him. Yeah. So Garrett says, "El, is there a community group?" I started a members. You can join a membership, and I want to start having members only lives. So that may be it. I listen, I don't have time to be I started a Facebook group. I kind of let that dwindle out. I just don't have time to run all that stuff. So I appreciate it. But I just don't have time for it. And somebody wanted me to start a dating group, and I just don't have time for I don't have time for all that. So even today I was working all day, and then I said, I wanted to get this video in because I saw it over the weekend. Sorry, I just don't have time to do all that. But I do appreciate that the question, but maybe we'll start it up one day. So yeah, NW says so over this no teamwork. Yeah, listen, this is what I'm talking about here. I'm making this video because in relation to self-improvement, to our mating and dating strategies and what we got going on in the dating market, the gender war between black men and black women, we got to work together. And as the next video or 2 videos from now, I'm going to show you, I'm going to demonstrate to you. You think you're in this club, you think you're doing something, and you're not. And we are falling so far behind in the marriage rates, in the numbers, in the finances. I played numerous videos talking about all this. We got to get it together. We got to get it together. We got to get it together. Hey, my girl Les, a dating group would be great. Yeah, I just don't have time to do it. I just don't have time to do it. You know, and there's a lot of parameters, and of course, you know, I would want it to be very, very strict as far as, you know, keeping the bums out. You know, the you know, so make sure it's very much on the up and up and all that kind of stuff. And I was just listening to something, and maybe somebody will do this on LinkedIn. LinkedIn, somebody was just saying, I was listening to BJ Moore, his stream, and he was just saying that LinkedIn should have and I thought this a long time ago too. LinkedIn should have a dating site. You're already in. Most people in there are verified, and you can't. You know, they're all professionals. Why don't they link up somehow, some way? So, yeah. All right. Remember, okay. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about the wake up call. We just played Larry Elder, the wake up call, and I had a picture of Thanos on my favorite MCU personality. So why do I got him up here? Because this always comes back. It always comes back.
You could not live with your own failure. Where did that bring you? Back to me.
All right. So if you haven't seen Endgame, make sure you go watch Endgame. All right. So this brings us to the main event for the evening here. L strict and verified, as in they pass modern high school diploma English standards. No, as in, you know, they really, you know, are who they say they are. They really are looking for long-lasting relationships. They really are looking for long-lasting relationships. They really want, they are, you know, again, they are who they say they are. They really have jobs and verified somehow, some way. And so, yeah, so all that kind of stuff, right? I don't care if you have a high school diploma or not, or speak English. The language don't matter to me. Somebody else you talk to, they speak English, you use a translator app, who cares? You know, but I know this is what people want. They want to partner up, but we got before we partner up, we got to figure all this other nonsense out. We got to figure out, the way that we view politics, the way that we view, there was a great debate yesterday. I was watching it. It was a sister too. She looked like she was half black or half white or very, very light-skinned black female. And she was dating a white dude, whatever. And she was on a debate with a guy named Andrew Wilson. And Andrew Wilson, I played him before. And so I was watching that debate, and she was actually hanging with them. She ended up, kind of doing some low blow kind of stuff, and saying some stuff that just to piss the guy off. But she was a smart girl. She was a senior in college. But the reason I'm bringing that up is because I want to talk about how we just don't see eye to eye on some things. This whole, we're voting in our own best interest, where the women are voting against the men and the men are voting against the women. That's why so many more men and black men are going more conservative, and more white men are definitely more conservative than black men. I think really that we're all conservative, but the whole racist stream or streak that runs through the Republican Party is what keeps the black men out. I guarantee you, if they really rooted that out, you'd see a lot more black men in the Republic. I guarantee you'd see a lot more black men in the Republican Party. And somebody put up here about, I think it was you, A Peaceful Life. Somebody put in here something about the plant, the Fox Soul, the Ice Cube presented the contract for America to address many issues, and black women and black community turned him down. I don't know about the black community, but certainly the black women turned him down. I played that a number of times, and they said we're not a part of the black community. I played Ebony K. Williams, an attorney, when she said that black men and black women have different political interests. So this type of stuff, we have to solve that type of stuff. We as a community don't even see, I don't even know if we can use the word community. We don't even see each other as a community. We don't see black men, don't see black women as a part of the community. Black, when you look at black, what the definition of is of a black family, and this is coming full circle, even in commercials, where it's just a woman and her kids. I mean, this is crazy. We gotta. This is the type of thinking that we have to change. So we're gonna get into this now, and you know, here's a brother who, again, I started all those videos that I played to get to this point. And the videos that I played was we came from this thing. Everything always comes back to race, and you think that you can escape this place. You think you're not part of the club, or you think you're not part of one club, or you can eschew them. You can get rid of them. I'm not this. I'm not black, and these black conservatives talking on the internet and talking on Fox News. I'm not a monolith. I hate that. I hate that terminology. Anytime I hear any black person say we're not a monolith, all I hear you saying is you don't want to be associated with being black. That's all I hear. You don't want to associate with it. You don't like us, our culture, our music, our food, you know, the way that we interact. And yes, does some of that need to be corrected from a professionalism standpoint? Absolutely. Right. There's a video. I think I played in one of my driving videos in which these girls were dancing around at the graduation, just looking crazy. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff I admit that we got to change. We got to fix up. Absolutely, 100%. However, we shouldn't be. I would never say that those sisters aren't black or that I'm not as black as they are. So that type of talk just bothers me. Now here we got a brother here. Let me put it on the screen here. Here we got a brother here whose name is Glenn Lowry. Oh, his name is Glenn Lowry. Glenn Lowry is I'm going to take you guys' comments down here. Oh no, I can leave them up. I'm going to so Glenn Lowry is I think he's an economics professor, or he's a retired economics professor in the emeritus status from Brown University. Smart dude. He's got a podcast. He's going to talk about all this. He's got a podcast. And him and another guy named John McWhorter I've seen from on CNN, and I've read a number of John McWhorter's articles in different magazines, and I've read one or two of the guy on screen here, Glenn Lowry's academic papers. You know, these are smart black dudes, right? So I read their work, and you know, I watch their podcast when they have something interesting to talk about. So he's going to talk about this, but I just want to give a summary. He recently was on stopped teaching at Brown and then joined a think tank full time. He was already a part of the think tank, but he joined them full time. So as his full time internship with the think tank, they were supplying him with funds for his podcast. You know, giving them scripts and, you know, making sure the lighting and whatever they do behind the scenes that I'm not getting. Y'all just make sure you cash out me some money here. So buy me some lunch at least. So they were basically, you know, funding him. Then he made some statements about Israel. Then he made some statements about Gaza. Then he made some statements about the Palestinians. And once he made those statements, it was over. It was over. This is when he got his wake-up call, according to Charlemagne and Larry Elder, right? This is the wake-up call. So it always comes back to race. So you think you're a part of this club. This black conservative thought he was part of this club. Then once you go against the mainstream, you see where you're at. So here we go. And shout out to Bad Faith. She did the interview here, and I don't know Bad Faith or how she is about her content. I am claiming fair use, and I do appreciate her doing this show here. So here we go.
Defenders of Israel tell me that I can't have that feeling, that I can't see with sympathy the consequences of the domination of these people. I'm talking about the Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank. You know, you use the settler colonialism analogy, and that's trivial, woke postmodernism. Well, apartheid, I got that. I won't use it. Earlier this year.
I had to fast forward all that, the preliminary stuff. I don't know why people do that. I don't know why that's a thing, but all right, here we go. I am going to speed it up a little bit here so we can get through this. It's a 27-minute video. I'll speed it up just a little bit so we can get through it. Here we go.
when they decided that they didn't want to renew our relationship with me as a distinguished senior fellow who's being compensated and being invited to undertake initiatives in the context of the Manhattan Institute.
The Manhattan Institute. Yeah, Candace Owens is another one who got her wake up call when she started speaking out in support of Palestine. Yeah, he's an intellectual. Yeah, he is. How does one become a member? You should be able to go to it should be a membership option there, or maybe there's some members only videos. Maybe click on that, and then it'll may ask you to become a member. So yeah, if you don't know how to become a member, I'm just assuming, I don't know, just click on it, search around my website, so or search around YouTube, the YouTube channel, or at least click on the members only video, and maybe they'll say to watch this, become a member. So that may be how you did it. If anybody else is a member, just tell us how you joined. Let's see. No powers. You have to have power. Absolutely. Black men are not part of any club. They're on their own. They don't want you to alert the people that can be a danger to their power and control. Candace Owens. Oh my, well, power. People power. Yeah, Candace Owens. Yeah, she got her wake up call too. So here we go.
They decided they didn't want to continue to do that. But that had an earlier episode where they elected not to continue to sponsor the Glenn Show, my podcast, which they had been lavishly and generously, and for which I was very grateful, helping me to support a team, that I relied on to produce the podcast. A very excellent producer and a very excellent editor and writer, and I'm still working with my team, but I'm doing so on a much thinner margin than I had been doing when I had MI support. So yeah, that happened, but it didn't happen yesterday. It's just that I decided I wasn't going to make a big deal out of it. But then after a while, I thought, well, probably I should explain to my followers why they no longer see me presenting the show as sponsored by the Manhattan Institute. And maybe I should appeal to my supporters that, independent voice, if you really appreciate the role that I'm trying to play in American public life, then, I need your support now more than ever. And so the opportunity, I don't want to name names, but some people I know who know some people I know who know Tucker said, you ought to go on Tucker. And I had done an interview with Tucker a few years ago on a different subject altogether, my life and my work and, being a Black conservative and whatnot. Tucker was interested in that. So I knew him casually, but he reached out, Tucker did, and asked me if I wanted to talk about this. And I decided I'd use that as the occasion to make news.
Well, news you made, indeed. So just to set this up a little bit, can you explain to the audience what the Manhattan Institute is, sort of what the politics of it are and what they do?
The Manhattan Institute is a well-funded and very active, right-of-center, urban-focused, domestic policy intensive think tank located in New York City. They published a journal called City Journal. They have writers who contributed to City Journal, like people like Heather McDonald and Christopher Rufo and many others. And they are players in the policy world and talk about housing, talk about education, talk about crime, policing, and whatnot, right of center. Anti-DEI would be one of the themes, but there are many. They're smart, they're nimble, and they used to be my home. I had thought stepping down from Brown, going to emeritus status, I was going to kind of refocus my institutional footprint in the policy world at the Manhattan Institute. And I had thought that I had cultivated relationships with people, including the staff there, the president, Raihan Salam, who's someone who I value, whose friendship I value, and had made appearances at, Tony dinners at the Harvard Club in New York City with the board of trustees, who are an estimable group of financiers and philanthropists and well-heeled. And, my persona was Black conservative bad boy prepared to call the woke folk to account, like you, Brianna, being against affirmative action and reparations and, whatnot, and realizing that George Floyd was probably not a person around whom you want to build a epic narrative of African-American striving and, many other things that you and I will disagree about, I'm sure. But I was that guy, I was going to be that voice. I was the voice that,
Now listen to what he just said. I got to break this up, right? Listen to what he just said. He thought he had cultivated relationships. They had sponsored a show. He had gone to these dinners. He did everything. Remember the other video I played by that sister? It doesn't matter what you know, it's who you know, right? So he did that. He played the game. That's why I played those videos. He did that. He played the game. He thought he was in the club. Then he makes one or two statements about the Palestinians, and he's out. He did what we telling people to do. Get educated, play the game. He did it. He did it.
Called out the looting is okay BS back in 2020. Again, you and I are not going to agree about all these things. And I was going to sort of plant my flag with the Manhattan Institute, which you asked me to describe, and I think I've done an adequate job of doing so. I was going to be a player in the right of center policy world, coming not from a university, but from a think tank. And MI was going to be my home until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't. So, I'm trying to resist Professor being a brat right now.
And I know what you're going to say.
And being like, well, I told you those people weren't your friends. I told you those are bad fellows. But I'm gonna resist. At least I'm gonna try to hold it off for at least like 20 minutes of this podcast and just ask you on.
What is she saying? She got to take notes there. What is she wants to be Thanos. You couldn't live with your own failure. Where'd that bring you? Back to the community, back to us. The respectability game is a losing game. Well, he found out. FAFO, right? Here we go.
On your own terms, sort of how you responded to this. So you're telling that these are people with whom you've had good professional and personal relationships and with whom you are ideologically aligned. And you've also said this is a think tank or an institute that focuses mostly on domestic urban politics. Right. So the question I have is, were you surprised when the issue of an international conflict between two countries that, of course, has implications given America's role in funding Israel, but is fundamentally an international, non-domestic conflict, was something that was such a red line and that caused people with whom you had these professional and personal relationships and so much simpatico to respond to you in what seems like a kind of cursory and quick fashion?
Was I surprised? Well, yeah, I was, and I shouldn't have been.
Why do you say you shouldn't have been?
His brother said he was, and he shouldn't have been. Listen, I don't mean to laugh, but you can't ever forget we are what we are and where our place is and our role is. You can't ever forget January 6th. You can't ever forget the other things that the white individuals that I played in those other previous clips. They told us, these dudes are marching in the streets, they're online. And this brother thinks because he's in this place and rubbing elbows with these people that he is one of them. It's crazy. It's crazy. And you go into the Glenn Lowry show. That's the podcast. There's a bunch of stuff on YouTube. Go to the Glenn Lowry show, and you'll see him talking about George Floyd, talking about reparations, talking about all this stuff. He's against it all. We get rid of DEI, get rid of affirmative action, get rid of it. We don't need it. Black folks just need to try harder, this, that. And some of it, listen, I agree with. But he thought he was rubbing elbow with these people, and you make this statement, as she said, about some place that's not even talking about policy here in America. Remember, the Manhattan Institute talking about policy here in America, urban policies here in America. You make a comment about something that's going on overseas, and you get booted for that?
Well, I mean, look, it didn't happen all in one day. Back in January of 2024, a few months after October 7th, and I should say that I denounced the violence perpetrated by Hamas in southern Israel on October 7th. I think I want to get that on the record. I have no brief for it whatsoever. It was a whole lot of adjectives that we could run down if we had the time. It was a bad thing. I have no justification, no argument for it. It's not justified by, and then we can go into the history and there'll be different points of view, but that history doesn't justify what was done. I'm against it. Okay, but I had Omar Barkov, the historian, colleague of mine. I've known him for 20 years. He's a professor of history here at Brown University. We've served on high-level university committees under the leadership of Ruth Simmons when she was here as president. Omar and I together. I know him well. I know he writes books about cities in Eastern Europe whose Jewish populations were decimated by the Nazis, and he knows a lot about the history of the Holocaust.
He's Israeli himself, isn't he? Israeli American?
Yeah, he's Israeli, right. And he thinks, or thought at that time, this is January of 2024, months after October 7th, but well into the Israeli response, incursion into Gaza bombardment. And he thought it bordered on genocide, and he basically said so. He's a student of genocide. He thought it bordered on genocide. He ran down International Court of Justice, International Criminal Court. United Nations, whatever. And I had him on the show. And I got a note from the staff saying, oh, we're sponsoring the Glenn Show, but we don't want to be mentioned when you give credits for that particular episode. That was in January. I mean, nothing else. No finger wag, no reprimand. Just we'd like to dissociate ourselves from that episode. I said, okay. And we did. Now, a smart person with their finger in the wind would say, oh, I touched on the third rail. People are sensitive about that. Let me look at who's on the board and let me look at what their other philanthropic activities are. Let me, and then let me take the smart, politically astute, savvy player posture in this whole situation. But I didn't do that. I was naive. I just went along. I said, oh, okay, these are my buddies. They didn't want that episode. It's no big deal.
This brother is he's telling you some game here. He's telling you some game. You guys who are still, well, I'm still working too, but in the world here, he's telling you some game, right? They kind of gave him some, we're gonna not sponsor this. Don't mention our name when you mention who sponsored this episode. Don't mention that. And he said to himself, I really should have took that not only for what it was, but then looked into it more, see who else they're supporting and who's on his board and all this kind of stuff. And he didn't do that. He didn't do that. And so because he didn't do that, follow his intuition, follow through, thinking he's one of the conservatives, thinking he's one of the boys, thinking his past accolades of elbow rubbing and going to these events and these friends and these relationships that he had established and nourished along the ways, he didn't do it. And now look where that got him.
And some months went by, and then Ta-Nehisi Coates comes out with this book, The Message. And I read the book. I read the book the day after it arrives from Amazon. I'm sorry, y'all. I just wanted to hear what Ta-Nehisi was going to say. I didn't know he was writing about Israel. I didn't know what was in the book. I just knew it was Ta-Nehisi had a book about writing 4 essays, one of them an open letter to his students, one of them about going to synagogue, one of them about going to some book banner thing in South Carolina, and one of them about going to the West Bank. And I read the book. And me and John McWhorter, who I talk with regularly at my podcast, got into a conversation about, we disagreed about the book. He thought, Ta-Nehisi Coates, he's got his head up his butt. And I thought, Ta-Nehisi Coates, he's shown himself to be a pretty interesting dude. And I said that.
And why is that? Because you've been critical of Coates in the past.
Yeah, and I'm not taking it back, that essay that made him famous on reparations. Again, you and I disagree, Brianna. I know we disagree. I'm not a fan of reparations. We could go into it, but I think...
I wrote a critical piece, a critical response to that essay in New York Magazine for different reasons than you, to be clear. But I have also, I respect him, and I would even go as far as saying I really like him, but I have had very strong disagreements with him politically. But I only raised that to say that I'm sorry?
No, I was going to say duly noted, and I was going to go on and say I didn't like Between the World and Me either, and I was going to take a minute to say why, but I don't need to do that.
Sure, but I'm just saying to give you the credibility that you certainly weren't someone who was an obsequious Ta-Nehisi Coates lover.
Correct.
When you decided to talk about his book on your podcast.
First of all, that book, including the chapter on his visit to the West Bank, but the whole book is just brilliantly written. It's just eloquent and lyrical, and it's really powerful art. It's the craft of writing that book. What he has to say to students about the politics of writing, about the importance of clarity and so on in your writing, and vividness and specific, and whatnot. His reflection on going to synagogue was full of such nuance in my mind. I mean, he's aware of the fact that there's a fictive dimension to his Africanness. He's an African American. He's a descendant of slaves. The slaves were imported from Africa across the Atlantic Ocean, but that was many generations ago. And his relationship to synagogue, to Africa, to Mother Africa, quote unquote, is fraught. It's fertile ground for a serious novelist or critic to raise a lot of different questions. And he raises questions there about that thing. And his encounter with those book banners in South Carolina, anyway, I could go on. The book was very well written and very well. So I'm reading this book and I'm saying, damn, this is really good. And then I get to the chapter on the West Bank. And I read it and I think, again, the craft, powerful. The humanity. I mean, he is in touch with the humanity of the Palestinians. That's really very important. The call to moral witness. You're an African American, you're a descendant of Frederick Douglass and W.B. Du Bois and so forth and so on. You are an inheritor of liberation struggle, of freedom struggle. You are among the subaltern until you kind of are not, because we're not any longer subaltern, I would say, but you're not sided with your nose pressed against the candy store window. You know what domination is. You know what white supremacy is. Now, is what's going on in the West Bank white supremacy? No, I'm not saying that. Is it domination? Sure. Yeah, it is. And when Coates, I think of many scenes. One scene is he's looking at the sunlight glinting off of the reflector shades of Centurion-type guards at a checkpoint. And he's thinking about a Georgia sheriff in 1958 enforcing a segregation order with the, same kind of smear. And there's a moment of recognition, and I don't mean to go on too long about this, but I'm just saying he's a black man. I'm a black man. He ventures into this thicket. I've been to Israel on many occasions, half dozen occasions over the course of the last 50 years. And he comes back and he reflects on it. In the 21st century, after the liberation of South Africa, after the triumph of anti-racism as a normative principle in global affairs, and he has something to say. And I thought, A, you brave dude, because you're walking into a maelstrom. But I thought, B, you're a writer. You're a black writer. I'm a writer, kind of. I'm definitely a black kind of writer.
Black kind of writer. He just can't come to the recognition of what we're saying here, right? So he's kind of a black writer, and he's praising. Listen to what he said. He's praising Ta-Nehisi Coates because Ta-Nehisi Coates connected his blackness not only to his experiences in America, but his time in Senegal, and he connected it to what the Palestinians are going through. This is all what he connected, and he himself, Lowry, had been to Palestine or Israel a number of times, never made that connection, never made the connection to being black. He forgot who he was. He forgot who he was. He was starting to live, and he couldn't deal with his own failure. And as Thanos said, what did that bring you? Bring you back to me. You can't ever forget this. I'm not telling you not to think less of yourself. I'm telling you to push yourself because of that. You're black, push yourself. Remember who you are, because at any moment in time, they will remind you of who you are. That's the point I'm making this for. We'll continue on with this.
What am I about? I see what you're about. What am I? I was shaken by that book. Mm-hmm. I was made to ask myself some questions about that book. And these questions are all the more powerful in my mind. In my observing that my conversation partner, John McWhorter, God love him, was not willing to ask those questions about himself. And, what kind of black writers are we now? And now I'm not necessarily commenting on the Middle East. I'm commenting on a kind of fidelity and integrity within the intellectual life of a black man in 21st century civilization.
Now you're doing,
and I'm not going to let these people, defenders of Israel, tell me that I can't have that feeling, that I can't see with sympathy the consequences of the domination of these people. I'm talking about the Palestinians in Gaza and in the West Bank. You use the settler colonialism analogy, and that's trivial, woke postmodernism. Well, it may or may not apply in every detail to the historical facts of Palestine and Israel, but it's definitely not irrelevant. You say apartheid. This is not apartheid. This is the administration of a necessary occupation where blah, blah, et cetera, et cetera. And I say, okay, Jimmy Carter. I got that from Jimmy Carter. I got that from Beth Stellum. I got that from the criminal court. I mean, but if you say don't use it, I won't use it. But it does have apartheid-like features, doesn't it? So you say South Africa is irrelevant, that the world opinion, the UN General Assembly and whatnot. And I say, look, I descend from people who sought succor and cover under the global agreement about human decency and equality, of which the South African relevance to this case is one such. Don't tell me I can't do that. Mm-hmm. What kind of intellectual, what kind of black intellectual would I be if I let you tell me that I couldn't do that? Oh, so now you're going to go to how phony it is for me to put myself forward as a black intellectual because I've essentialized identity. Who exactly is essentializing identity in this argument? You mean to say Jewish identity is not as problematic as is black identity, and some of the same questions of essentialization and socialism, chauvinism could be raised against it? You call me the universalist ground, but you retreat behind a partisan ethnic bunker? So, Brianna, let me say it again. What Hamas did on October 7, 2023 was horrific, despicable, but it does not justify the destruction of 2 million people. And if I were to watch that unfold before my very eyes and not say so, what kind of human being, let alone black intellectual, would I be? That's how I feel about it.
Professor, it's kind of emotional and thrilling and exciting and confounding to hear you wrestle with what feels like what's 100% at the heart of not just this issue, the Israel-Palestine issue, but also what's been animating a lot of other prongs of discourse over the past years. I recently was engaging with Norm Finkelstein, who's another one of these sort of iconoclasts who is very pro-Palestine. He's one of the preeminent, perhaps the preeminent scholar and historian on Gaza. It also has been a leader in criticizing excesses, or what he described as excesses of sort of the woke left and identity politics and the like. And while I've made my own critiques of those things, we have gone back and forth about whether or not, in some instances, he's taken the criticisms too far, in my view, and also whether the current moment of protests in support of Palestine and crackdowns on university campuses against them, the retrenchment of free speech principles from many figures on the right who purported to value those principles.
This is important what she's saying here. The principles, the free speech, the crackdown. I know I don't talk a lot about this in politics, but I do try to pay attention about this. The crackdowns of what happened in Harvard and other universities when this administration tried to tamp down on individuals who were speaking up for Palestine. And they were arresting people, stopping people at the border, all kind of crazy stuff, trying to get them out the country, all because they didn't like the stance that they took on the Israeli Palestinian situation. And we're supposed to have freedom of speech. And so now Brianna is saying, to watch you have to wrestle with this and to get this, as we are terming it, the wake-up call, right? And here you are actually connecting. Hey, wait a minute, what happened to us in America? What happened to South Africans in the apartheid state there? Is this same thing happening to the Palestinians? And to have this moment of clarity and to have this intellectual honesty and question, and then have your card pulled to be pulled into the principal's office, as it were, about your stance on this type of thing. This is unacceptable, right? So this is where he's at. I'm going to rewind Brianna's monologue here a little bit.
And crackdowns on university campuses against them, the retrenchment of free speech principles from many figures on the right who purported to value those principles, the use of what I would call a weaponized identity politics by Zionists to ask for the same sort of punishments and punitive behaviors that they criticized when they were ostensibly being made in service of pro-Black wokeness, even though, of course, certainly nobody was being kicked out of school and their diplomas denied and deported and having their green cards revoked and stuff because they were insufficiently woke. The scale of these things is very different. And that's also part of the discourse. Does what's happening now to pro-Palestine students cause us to reflect about the energy that was spent or the lack of perspective that was perhaps had when we were criticizing left excesses? And so all of that has come out in what you just said. But the part that I really want to kind of focus in on is how you're seeing your own race inform your perspective. I will say for me, I've been muddling on this for a while, and I do think that being a Black American informs, I think, my gut impulse as to the stakes of what's happening in Palestine and why Israel's legally defined occupation of Palestine and the ethnic cleansing that happened in 1948 and that is happening now and has happened incrementally throughout the last 76 years is wrong. When I see the media ecosystem so forcefully press one view of who Palestinians are, and I see the statistics about the language that is used for Palestinians, prisoners versus Israelis hostages, even if the hostages are soldiers and the Palestinian prisoners are innocent non-combatants, children, etc. I see the asymmetry with which words like barbarism are used to describe Hamas's behaviors, but not Israel's behaviors.
And those same type of languages, when I teach a class called race, race, ethnicity, and crime. And that type of language that she's talking about there, and I'm sure that every journalist every Black journalist anyway should know this, right? That type of language that she's using, barbarism, hostages, prisoners, and that's how they paint the narrative. I talk about that in the race class that I teach. As a matter of fact, I'm going to teach it again in this coming up. So this is important. That type of language frames our thinking about how we look at different situations, and it was done to us throughout the years. There was a one famous case that I talk about where it was something after a storm, and they looked at how how the white individuals, they found food, right? Because the stores were all closed down, but they went into the stores and they found food. But if they were Black, they're looters, right? That type of language. So this is exactly what she's pointing out. So Here we go.
The IDS behaviors. And there's something very familiar to me as a Black American who is a minority in this country and has no other country to turn to for recourse, to represent me. What it feels like to be overwhelmed and not have control of my own media, my own news, my own political infrastructure in the way that Palestinians do. And I heard you say, you don't think
you said
that
in the way that Palestinians have control.
Sorry, in the way that
I don't think that's what you meant.
We similarly don't have control, is what I meant to say, us and Palestinians. You mentioned white supremacy and that you think that might be an uneasy fit. It's not a one-to-one, and that's not a word you would use to describe, perhaps because, you might not describe Israelis as white or this
You're
different
too
racial
young to
dynamics.
remember the Zionism is racism debate of the 1970s and 1980s.
Blessedly so, I think. I'm in enough hot water. I don't want to.
Powell, the Black man Secretary of State in the George W. Bush administration in 2001 did not go to Durban, South Africa to the World Conference Against Racism to represent the United States. They sent a lower level delegation. I was there in Durban, South Africa in 2001 for the World Conference Against Racism. And I saw people marching through the streets of Durban with placards saying Zionism is racism. And I took on board what's at stake for defenders of Zionism in ensuring that equation not be given legitimacy. And I think that's the root of what you were talking about.
Yes. And so let me ask you then, do you still agree with that? Having read Coates' account and all of us, I think, being thrust so intimately into having, being more aware of how the apartheid conditions, I would agree with that characterization.
I wouldn't use the characterization because I think it's arguably excessive and certainly offensive to people on the other side. And because I want to conduct a discourse with them that is productive, I wouldn't get bogged down in trying to call Zionism racism. I call Zionism Zionism and deal with those supremacist aspects of it that infringe upon my normative judgments about how society should be ordered. And, I don't want to argue with people about that. And as I say, I kind of respect their sensibility. You're equating it to race, and we know the evil of racism. We know the evil of slavery. You're saying that our aspiration to a Jewish national homeland is equivalent to the Nazis' despicable derogation of Africanness as being, subhuman and not for whatever. We're not a race. We are a national. I don't want to get into an argument with people about that. So I would eschew that formulation.
Taking a step back from that, though, do you disagree with the characterization of there being a racial component to Israel's ability to act toward Palestinians the way that they have and not get the pushback from the world that might have occurred if perhaps the racial dynamics were different, if Palestinians and Arabs were viewed and Muslims were viewed more differently in the world?
I want to address this comment by a Peaceful Life here. Do Palestinians care about Black Americans? Is what she neglects to consider, or would they say if the show was on the other foot? Here's my thoughts about that. I think that Black Americans are in a vastly different spot considering the plight of African diasporic people around the world. We have our culture, our fame spreads throughout, and we have a chance and an opportunity to really affect how these people live, right? Our pushing for Ibrahim Traoré, forgive me for butchering his name there. We got to stand with all these different people. And there are Black folks who live, or people of African descent who live in Palestine, and there's some who live in Israel as well. So we got to understand, I don't like this separation. We got to get it. We got to get it together. Yes, I agree with you. We should look at our own house, fix our own house, do what we got to do in order to make sure that we emerge victorious in this plight, to make sure that we can foster better care of ourselves, open up businesses, home ownership. I certainly acknowledge that. Yes, we're shooting each other too much. Our violence, our STD rates, all the other stuff that we've talked about is often through the roof. That doesn't mean we can't also care about the plight of other people who are oppressed around the world. Right? We did that for South Africa, right? We have to do the same thing. We did it for South Africa in the 80s, I'm saying. We got to do the same thing now. We should always try to reach out and make sure that we have solidarity with people who are less fortunate than themselves. Does that mean we should neglect ourselves and shouldn't care about JoJo down the street, or the incarceration rates that we have going on or here, or the violence, or the water in Flint, Michigan, it's still a problem, or the other issues. No, but what we don't do, and I agree with, is we don't organize vastly enough. We don't talk about it enough, right? We're too busy fighting this gender war. We're too busy getting divorced from each other. We're too busy, blaming parents and separating from each other. And in this particular case, what I think he is exemplifying is this idea that you made it to a certain degree, to a certain level of status, and you stop looking at other people. And then when his wake-up call comes, because when he goes to Israel, those 9 times that he said, he never saw the problem, right? So he's rubbing elbows with these people. He's teaching in an Ivy League school, and he's thinking, if I can make it, you can make it. This is the problem. Somebody else brought this up before with the Malcolm X comment. This is the problem with the educated Negro. This is the problem with the uppity Negro. You think that you're one of them, and you stop looking back and you stop caring about that, right? The reason that I went to school when I was a police officer and I went back to school, one of the reasons, not only for my own edification and benefit, but I also want to understand why is our community in this disarray. That's why I studied forensic psychology. I wanted to understand this. So we got to understand, and this is unfortunately, this is not just about him, but this is about all of us collectively understanding that when some of us make it to this spot, when we get to that suite in the office, when we sit in the college campus, when we sit on the board of directors, or we're sitting wherever we're sitting, I think that we still have a responsibility to reach back to someone who's less fortunate than us. When we talk about, just like the video I played before, when we talk about it's not who you know, it's what you know. When we get to the place, we are the what. When I became a captain, I am the what. Or excuse me, I am the who. I am the who you know. So if you want an opportunity, you got to come talk to me about it. When we get a black chief of police, you got to come talk to him about that. They got to be in the place to make things happen. Same thing with the principals in schools, politicians, or heads of CEOs, or wherever they are. You got to make things happen. And if you're not making things happen, then you are part of the problem. And I think that Glenn Lowry is now recognizing, he may not say it, but he understands to a certain degree, at least I think he's understanding, that he's part of the problem. He got to this certain place, he looked back and sat on his laurels and said, man, I made it up here. I'm teaching at an Ivy League school. I went to school. I got this education. How come you can't do it? And he pointed down his nose at George Floyd. He pointed down his nose at other people, never considering the plight of these individuals go through. What's the food like in their communities that they come from? What's the economics like? What are the job prospects? What are the police harassment like in these situations? You got to consider all these types of things. And as an economics professor, this was always so surprising to me about this. As an economics professor, he should have been looking at all that, because I've read his papers. He looked at crime rates. He looked at nutrition rates and nutrition and education and all these different types of things all have an effect on psychology and sociology. So how he could sit up there here in his ivory tower and say, "Oh man, if I can do it, you can do it," it's surprising and shocking to me, to say the least. So that's why I want to play this video, not just about him, but he has to come to the realization, we all have to come to the realization that no matter what we are, no matter what our status is, no matter what our title is, at the end of the day, these people can take it away from you, and that you're a black man, you're a black woman. And this is why this is in particular why I don't like this gender war that we got going on between black men and black women. I don't need a man. I can do this. I'm just going to go overseas. I'm going to do that. Listen, we are what we got. We are what we got. So let's work together. So we talk about figuring things out, working together. Who cares about other communities? All this type of language. Let's work on ourselves. Let's get it together. Let's become peaceful with each other. Let's recognize this problem that is going on here, and stop becoming so atomized and so isolated in our own silos and towers, because we got this degree, we got this education, we got this job, we got this thing. When I say we, I'm talking about me and my family, me and my kids. We got it. Everybody else is on their own. Again, Malcolm X talked about, we want to become, he called it Americanism. You want to become a part of the American project to do what American has done to other people. If you don't know about that, you got to read some more. What America has done, the CIA operations, all this kind of stuff, right? So I just want to address that for a minute. We got a few more minutes of this.
When you hear the sort of pushback and justifications for what has happened since October 7th, do you think that there's a racial component to the arguments that are being made in defense of Israel and Israel's actions and Zionism more broadly?
So I read something from, what's her name, Caitlin Johnstone or something like that. She's somebody that's a blogger. I get her stuff. And she says, if it were Jews dying in Gaza under bombardment and it were Muslims who were dropping the bombs on them, wouldn't we be discussing the situation differently? And I don't think there's any doubt that would be discussing. So then what does that rest on, she says, and I think I agree with her. I rest on the extent to which you take the humanity of the persons subject to this kind of a depredation seriously. And we would be more likely to take the humanity of Jews as victims of this to heart in a way that people are not reflexively inclined to do on behalf of Palestinians because they're Arabs and they're, is that racial? We're going to have to get into an exegesis about what we mean by race, but here's what I define in my book, The Anatomy of Racial Inequality. Excuse me for this self-promotion. I say it's embodied social signification. It's when marks on your body, shape of the bones in your face, the texture of your hair, the color of your skin, the body type. When marks on your body take on social significance, such that people get categorized based upon those marks, and elaborate ideational structures get built upon those categories.
Ideations of political structures get based on the categories of the features of people's face and the texture of their skin, the color of their skin and the texture of their hair. And you cannot, we try as hard as we try to negate these things. We have DEI, we have trainings, we have affirmative action. We try to negate this type of thing. And every psychologist will tell you, anybody who's ever studied any type of psychology will tell you that people always prefer people of their own kind. The closer you are to their kind, they're going to prefer that. And unfortunately, and I don't mean this as there's something wrong with us inherently. I'm saying that unfortunately, considering a global capitalistic experiment, Africans are the most diverse from the dominant population. We're the most different from the dominant population, the white European. While they're in control, we are the exact opposite. Their hair is straight, ours is kinky. Their skin is white, ours is dark. So therefore, they're always going to choose people. Everyone is going to choose people who are similar to them, in proximity to them. Everybody's always going to do that. And trying to disassociate yourself from that by bleaching skin, fake hair, fake eyelashes, contacts is not going to erase anything. And this brother got that wake-up call the day that he started posting some things that his boss, his overseers, didn't like.
Now, by that definition of race, while it's not African versus European, you could say that there's a racial element to this thing. And I would say that. I think my Jewish defenders of Zionism, brothers and sisters, as Cornell would say, Cornell West, my friend, would say, would take umbrage at that, because they would say we're not white, we're a communal ancestral community and ethnos, and it's not about race. It's about, literally, it's about who your mother was and who the rabbis say is a Jew. But that's not race. And, like I said earlier about the Zionism versus race, I don't want to get into a hair-splitting argument with people about what is or what isn't, but it certainly has racial-like characteristics, I would say, based upon my scientific definition of race as embodied social signification. Marks on people's bodies are having social signification, for sure.
Hey, YouTube, thanks for watching. Just a reminder that this is...
All right, so that was that. Hopefully she don't give me any strikes or whatever. So so that was that video. So I just thought it was interesting that he had to, he tried his best to try to talk himself out of this, that the issue that's going on in Palestine isn't really about race, and it's he's dancing around that. He's still not there yet. He's still trying to wake up from this grogginess. He's still wiping the sleep out of his eyes after he'd been booted. And I'm not saying this in any celebratory type of way. I'm saying that, listen, man, I mean, he's wrote a lot of papers, done a lot of work, had his podcast, and probably did a lot in his career and tenure at Brown. But when he, left that position and tried to join the Manhattan Institute, and they said, listen, brother, we don't tolerate that type of stuff. He got his call. He got his call. So how he woke up and realized he wasn't invited to the big house on the plantation. Yeah, you're we invite people to the cookout. They invite people inside the big house, and it was a big party. He wasn't in it. It's a big party. He wasn't in it. So this is I like to play this sometimes. This is one of my favorite movies, and this is from that. And this is Die Hard, and Die Hard, or John McClane from Die Hard, is going through a lot of trouble, right? He's having these fights, he's calling people for help. If you ever watched Die Hard, he's calling people for help. He's calling the 911. He's trying to get some help. And then when the cops finally show up and he shows them, what the problem is that's going on out here, he says, "Welcome to the party, pal." And I absolutely love that. So I'm going to leave it off with this and take any questions. This is the last video, just a real quick, brief one here. Welcome to the party, pal. Party, pal. So that's all the violence and all that kind of stuff we've been dealing with. We've been trying to tell you. Malcolm X trying to tell you. Everybody's trying to tell you. You don't want to listen. Brianna was trying to tell you and all this kind of stuff. Well, welcome to the party. Welcome to the party. So, all right. So hit the like button. I don't know where we're at with the likes, but this was not a juicy, salacious topic about about men and women, but I definitely think it's important that we understand, who we are and where we are and all that kind of stuff. So if you have not hit the like button, please make sure you hit the like button. If you watch this in the future, make sure you hit the like button. I would greatly appreciate it. And if you want to buy me a sandwich or buy me some lunch, I would certainly appreciate it. If there's no more comments, we're going to call it for tonight. I do appreciate y'all rocking with me for tonight. And maybe tomorrow night I will play, go through Sabby Sabs as she runs through the numbers about Black women in their marriage rates. So I know y'all like to see that kind of stuff. So, all right. Anybody else got anything? I would really appreciate. I'll take a second here. I know it's a little late. I know I got a little bit of a delay here, so. This is one of those forever conversations. Yeah, listen, I mean, we got, and I agree with A Peaceful Life. We got to have the conversations amongst ourselves. We really got to fix this. If we can really fix this situation amongst Black folks, I agree. I agree with that. I'm not disagreeing with that. We got a lot of work to do, and we got to figure this out. The most important thing is figuring out where this problem comes from and how we really defeat it. Well, really, how we come where this problem comes from. You talk to a number of scholars; they can't even decide how we got into this situation. They can't even decide. I've asked them, how did we get in this situation? You go back and listen to my conversation with Diane Stewart. How do we get in this situation? How did we get in this situation? I don't really know. Not really sure. Not really sure. We don't know what something happened in the 1960s. We don't know what it is. Could it be feminism? Could it be the successful completion of the civil rights movement, and the next movement that was rammed down our throats, our collective throats, was feminism? Could that? I mean, just saying, could that have been it? Once Roe v. Wade and once no fault divorce was put into effect, divorce is what 700% increase in divorces. Could that be it? I'm just saying. The last few months should have been a wake-up call for most. Yeah, it should have been. Should have been. A big wake-up call. What came in, 2022 or whenever, 2022, 2023, when they eliminated affirmative action, U.S. Supreme Court eliminated that. That should have been a big wake-up call. Should have been. When are we going to love ourselves enough to truly care? That's a good question, High Vibe. That's a good question. Influence and control of other types. That's a good question. Yeah. All right, y'all. I appreciate y'all coming out, hanging out with me. 21 likes, 29 in chat. Please hit the like. Yeah, listen, y'all hit the likes. I really appreciate it. I'd like to do these every night, but got to get some more people up in here. So, and also, if you guys don't have my email, make sure you hit me up with some stuff you wanted me to talk about, or if you got any news stories. Somebody sent me some stories, which I did put on the videos tonight, but I do try to get to them, and I want to try to get to more political stuff, more things that I think are eventually community oriented. I do want to do that a little bit more because I think that it's important. Face orange TV shape. I don't know what that means. Gifted $5 L39 podcast memberships. Thank you so much for that high vibe. You are fantastic. Thank you so much. You are certainly a strong rider. I appreciate that. Appreciate that. All right, y'all. So when you go to work tomorrow, remember who you are. Remember who you are. Hello, Dr. I'm late viewing your channel. Yesterday was Malcolm X's 100th birthday. Oh, yes, you're right about that. Was it yesterday? Yeah, you're right about that. Yeah, May 19th. I totally forgot about that. I should have did a show then. Dang, that's my fault. Dang, that's my fault. Dang, I'm sorry I missed that. The biggest big house caught fire. Pretty shocking. Yeah. Yeah, y'all remember who you are when you go to work tomorrow. When you're sitting in traffic, remember who you are, right? So, all right, y'all. Thank you guys for joining. Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all. Much love and peace. I will see you guys. I think I'm dropping a video tomorrow morning. I think I am. So we'll see you guys. Take care of yourselves. Much love and peace.